On June 30th, 1964, 14-year-old Jessica Minter had a date to go swimming with her girlfriend Debbie Boyd. Debbie arrived at 10:55 a.m. to pick up Jessica. The front door was slightly ajar. Debbie went inside and found Jessica's lifeless body on the living room floor. Her nightgown was pushed up around her shoulders, and she had been stabbed 21 times. Does this story sound familiar? In this episode, we are going to explore two of the most horrific crimes of 1964. The two cold cases are eerily similar, yet have their own unique facets that leave us wondering, are we looking for one killer or two? I will let you be the judge of that. Let's begin with the details of the Jessica Minter case. There was little information found on the investigation. It was almost as if any clues or details went to the grave with her. What we do know is that Jessica was murdered just 6 months before Beverly Jarosz. If you are not familiar with the Jarosz case, I will put the link to that episode on the screen now. There are certain aspects of these two 58-year-old cold cases that have caused authorities and mystery sleuths alike to suggest a possible link between Jessica and Beverly. As we dig deeper into Jessica's murder, we'll do a side-by-side comparison to try and unravel the mystery that surrounds their tragic deaths. Jessica lived at 2801 Anita Drive in Lawrenceville, a community that is part of the Springfield, Ohio metropolis in Clark County. The home had been built just 4 years prior to her murder in the up-and-coming development of West Ridge. Jessica and her mother Elizabeth resided in the lovely, peaceful community after her parents' divorce. Jessica, an honors student, was well-liked and had many friends. Even though the pretty 14-year-old had several male friends, she was not allowed to date. Her mother, Elizabeth, was very strict, and if Jessica wanted to see one of her suitors, the boy would have to come to their home and visit her under her mother's supervision. Neighbors would say after Jessica's murder that Elizabeth sometimes behaved weirdly and was so strict that she and Jessica often argued. The Tuesday of June 30th started just like any other warm summer day. The Minters' next-door neighbor, Harry Helfrich, age 10, was cutting the Minters' lawn between 7:30 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. He neither saw nor heard anything unusual. Elizabeth Minter told authorities she had left for work at 9 a.m. and that Jessica was awake but still in bed when she left. Mrs. Minter was secretary and treasurer for her family's meatpacking firm, Fink and Hine Company. Between 9 a.m. and 9:30 a.m., Harry Helfrich was sitting on his bike in his driveway when he heard a scream from the Minters' home. At the same time, he noticed a boy's red and white bicycle in the Minters' driveway. From the hours of 9 a.m. to 10:55 a.m., no one in the neighborhood saw anyone going in or coming out of the Minter home. At 10:55 a.m., Debbie Boyd arrived to pick up Jessica. The two had planned to meet up with friends and go swimming. She honked her horn, and when Jessica didn't come out, Debbie went to the front door. Debbie found the door ajar. She stepped inside and found Jessica sprawled on the living room floor, covered in blood. Debbie ran from the house screaming. A fireman who had been working on his house across the street heard the commotion and went running into the Minter house. Upon discovering Jessica's half-naked, bloodied body, he covered her up and called authorities. When authorities arrived, they found all the doors locked except the front door. The family dog was contained in the garage. The nightgown Jessica had been wearing was modest in style. The coroner's report would later state that Jessica had sustained 21 stab wounds with no sign of sexual assault. No weapon was found at the scene. There were no signs of a struggle. After a thorough investigation of the crime scene, Sheriff Elwood Thackeray believed Jessica was well acquainted with her assailant. He stated, "She wouldn't let anyone in if she hadn't known them awfully well." Taking into consideration that she was wearing her nightgown and that the upper portion of the front door was glass, Jessica was able to see who was at the door before opening it. Based on the blood spatter found on a closet door beside the front door entrance, investigators believe Jessica answered a knock at the door and was stabbed almost immediately upon opening it. The first stab wounds Jessica sustained were one to the back that was the only one to go through her gown. The next ones were one to her head and one to her neck. In trying to piece the events together, investigators thought she may have felt comfortable enough with her assailant that she turned her back to him and was taken by surprise with the first stab wound to the back, followed by the ones to the head and neck. From that point, Jessica may have been trying to flee through the living room and either succumbed to her injuries and collapsed to the floor or was overtaken by her assailant. Once on the floor, Jessica's nightgown was unbuttoned and pushed up to her shoulders. The killer then inflicted 18 more stab wounds to her chest and abdomen. The attack would take place while children were playing outside, neighbors were mowing grass, men were working on a house across the street, and some utility men were not far away. Yet no one but 10-year-old Harry heard or saw a thing. And the family dog in the garage that was known to bark at strangers, he never made a sound. Investigators had high hopes of solving the crime quickly. After all, in a small community, how hard could it be to find a killer with a red and white bicycle? They even had a bicycle tire track that was left in the driveway as evidence. So questioning began with the teenage boys in the neighborhood, followed up by intensive questioning of Jessica's friends and acquaintances, but no clues or suspects were found. Deputies were eager to question Elizabeth Minter about the knives in her house, as they were trying to determine if a kitchen knife was used or the killer carried it in. But Mrs. Minter had been under sedation since learning of her daughter's murder, so an interview with her would not take place until after Jessica's funeral. The investigation would turn up one important detail. Jessica was involved with 17-year-old Bruce Fuller. The two had been seeing each other for about 10 months, and we can assume that Mrs. Minter had no knowledge of this. In an agreement with Bruce and his parents, Bruce submitted to a lie detector test. The test results were determined to be inconclusive. Elizabeth Minter's lie detector test didn't go well either. Waiting until after Jessica's funeral, investigators brought Elizabeth in for 3 days of intense questioning, sometimes lasting up to 6 hours long. Elizabeth Minter then submitted to a lie detector test. When asked about the results, Sheriff Thackeray commented, "Mrs. Minter's results were not satisfactory, but this could be because of the sedatives she had been taking, so we could ask for a second test later." To further complicate the case, the coroner's report would leave even more unanswered questions. First, I'll summarize the autopsy report, then highlight the findings in Coroner Austin Richards' report. The autopsy stated that Jessica had one stab wound to her back between the right 9th and 10th rib, one stab wound on the occipital region of the scalp, one stab wound on the right anterior neck, multiple lacerations to the heart and lungs, a total of 12 wounds to the chest area. 3 of those stab wounds passed through the sternum itself. Jessica also suffered 3 stab wounds of the diaphragm and 3 lacerations to the liver. In total, she sustained 6 stab wounds to her abdomen. Coroner Richards' report states that Jessica Minter died of multiple stab wounds and internal hemorrhage. Her body was found near the front door of her home, and upon arrival observed immediately that the girl had been murdered. Springfield Police Sergeant Womack photographed the body and combed for fingerprints. Once Sergeant Womack was finished, Jessica's body was removed to Mercy Hospital, where Dr. Mary Hunter conducted the autopsy. There were 21 stab wounds inflicted by what is presumed to have been a knife with at least a 5 to 6 inch blade. Investigation reveals mother stated that she left for work at 9 a.m. If this were true, Jessica Minter would have been killed between 9 a.m. and 10:55 a.m. Due to dry condition of the blood on the surface of the area where the wounds were inflicted, it was my opinion that it had been a longer period of time. This part of the report is very important because there is no mention of rigor or that Jessica's body temperature had been taken. Richards is basing time of death on dried blood, with a window of 2 to 4 hours. This murder occurred in summer, so did temperatures inside the house play a part in the dried blood? And then you must ask yourself, how dry was the blood? If Richards is correct, this leaves Mrs. Minter without an alibi. If Richards is wrong, he's making Mrs. Minter look guilty of a crime she didn't commit. Richards goes on to say that a palm print was found beside Jessica's body, and Sergeant Womack should be able to tell if the print matches the hand of any person involved in this investigation. He said many persons have been interviewed and questioned extensively, and while there does not seem to be direct evidence from any of these people by their own statements, the fact remains that the girl was murdered in an otherwise friendly neighborhood at the hand or hands of a person or persons to me unknown. I do, however, believe that all the officers involved in the investigation would have an opinion regarding this death. I am therefore returning a verdict of homicide. These last 2 statements at the end of Coroner Richards' report didn't go unnoticed by those who had followed this case from the beginning. They have cited that it's highly unusual for a coroner to offer opinions and allude to the fact that the police had zeroed in on a killer as of July 15, 1964. As the investigation moved forward, there was only one other person of interest, and that was Howard Thomas Manuel. The 20-year-old Manuel had murdered mentally handicapped Betty Jean Smith. The 16-year-old was beaten and stabbed 39 times, and Manuel had attempted to rape her after she was dead. Investigators were never able to establish a link between the two murders. Now that we have established a timeline, reviewed the investigation, and examined the coroner's report, let's now compare Jessica Minter's case to Beverly Jarosz. Both Jessica and Beverly were in their teens. They looked similar. They were very popular and studious. Their parents were very strict about dating, and the girls lived just 185 miles apart. Beverly had received harassing phone calls before her death. This 2016 letter from the Attorney General's office responding to a request for information about phone stalking in the Minter case was denied. We can assume that Jessica may also have been stalked by phone before her death. Both girls were home alone getting ready to go out with friends between late morning and early afternoon. Jessica and Beverly had girlfriends meeting them at their homes the day they were murdered. Upon arriving, their friends found doors open or ajar. In Beverly's case, the entrance door was open, but the screen door was locked, preventing her girlfriend Barbara from entering. She would later be found dead by her father. Unfortunately, that would not be the case for Jessica's friend Debbie, who found Jessica's body that fateful morning. The homes of both girls were in nice suburban areas within close distance of their neighbors' homes, and yet the killer went undetected. Both Jessica and Beverly were familiar with their assailants and let them in. Jessica was stabbed 21 times and Beverly was stabbed 42 times and strangled. Both girls had been stabbed in the back. Jessica didn't struggle with her attacker, but Beverly put up a tremendous fight against hers. Neither girl was found to have any DNA under her fingernails. Jessica's nightgown was unbuttoned and pushed up before her attacker delivered 18 stab wounds. Beverly's shirt was pulled up and her bra cut. Her pants were also pulled down. Neither girl was sexually assaulted. So there you have it. Are we looking for one killer or two? Did a budding serial killer begin his life of crime with Jessica and then move on to Beverly? Was Elizabeth Minter guilty, or were police just looking for a scapegoat to wrap up a case that was quickly going cold? Rumors and theories have continued to swirl around Jessica's murder for decades. Police once theorized that Jessica didn't let her assailant in, but was trying to escape out the front door during her attack. And even though Elizabeth Minter's ex-husband and father of Jessica adamantly denied that she would never commit such a heinous crime, it didn't stop rumors from haunting Elizabeth all the days of her life. Rumors of her being late for work that day, the family dog that never barked during the murder. She showed no emotion after seeing Jessica's butchered body, and neighbors say she even cleaned up the blood herself. Of course, we can't forget the bicycle and the scream reported by little Harry Helfrich, which leads us back to an assailant that Jessica let into the house. Whatever the case may be, Jessica Minter is dead. A 14-year-old girl, just a child really, stabbed to death in her home on a warm summer day. A day when people were mowing, children were playing, and construction on new homes was taking place. Yet no one saw a thing. If you have any information about the murder of Jessica Minter, please call the Springfield Police Department at 937-324-7680. If you have any information about the Beverly Jarosz murder, please call the Garfield Heights Police Department at 216-475-1234. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will be back soon with another cold case. Please consider subscribing to my channel. Take care and be safe. This is Eye on Justice.